Burgundy has become expensive. There is no point pretending otherwise. Over the past decade, prices has climbed so dramatically that many wine lovers have simply stopped buying Burgundy altogether. I didn't. I just stopped chasing famous labels. Instead, I started looking for something else. Vineyards that consistently drink above their classification. Places where the quality in the glass is greater than the name on the label. Because for me, value has never meant buying the cheapest wine. Value means buying the most quality for your money. After more than 30 years of exploring Burgundy, vineyard by vineyard, producer by producer, and building my own cellar, one site has quietly become one of my favorite purchases. On la Rue de Vergy, a small village vineyard in Morey-Saint-Denis. On paper, it's only a village appellation. In the glass, I genuinely believe it competes with quite a few Premier Crus. And somehow, despite everything that's happened to Burgundy prices, you can still find excellent bottles for around $65 to $95. For a Côte de Nuit vineyard of this quality, that's exceptional value. Today, I'm comparing two of my favorite producers from this remarkable site, Domaine Bruno Clair and Domaine Gilbert and Christine Felettig. Both have been in my cellar for years. Both expressed the same vineyard, yet they couldn't be more different. In this video, I will explain why On la Rue de Vergy has become one of my favorite buying opportunities in Burgundy. Compare these two producers side by side and ultimately tell you which I would recommend depending on the style of Burgundy you enjoy. And before we begin, while you are still discovering your preferences, buy 3 or 6 bottles rather than a full case of 12. A cellar should evolve alongside your taste. Before we get into the wines, let's spend a minute on the vineyard itself, because this is where the magic happens. On la Rue de Vergy sits high above the Grand Cru Clos de Tart on a steep southeast-facing slope. It's a tiny vineyard of just 4.81 hectares. The soils are shallow and incredibly rocky, mostly limestone and marl, with very little organic matter. Poor soils force the vines to dig deep into the bedrock, producing wines with remarkable mineral definition. For decades, this altitude was considered a disadvantage because the vineyard often struggled to ripen fully. Ironically, climate change has transformed that weakness into one of its greatest strengths. Today, the cooler elevation helps preserve freshness and acidity, while many lower vineyards become increasingly rich. The result is a style that's bright, precise, mineral, and far more serious than most people expect from a village wine. That's exactly why I keep coming back. Domaine Gilbert and Christine Felettig. Henri Felettig expanded the family estate for just 2 hectares in the 1960s to 9 hectares before passing it to his children, Gilbert and Christine. Today, the domain covers around 13 hectares, from Gevrey-Chambertin to Beaune, including several outstanding Premier Crus and Grand Cru issues. Since moving towards estate bottling around 2010, and with Gilbert's daughter, Pauline, joining the Domaine in 2022, quality has continued to improve. Their holding in On la Rue de Vergy is tiny, just 0.2 hectares, which makes these bottles relatively scarce despite remaining surprisingly affordable. In my opinion, this remains one of Burgundy's most underrated producers. On the nose, I find black cherry, blackberry, plum, baking spice, cocoa, and subtle earthy notes. The palate is generous and beautifully textured. Dark fruit sits at the center, supported by polished tannins and impressive concentration. Despite the vineyard's mineral backbone, Felettig gives the wine a softness and generosity that makes it remarkably approachable from a young age. It's elegant, refined, and wonderfully easy to enjoy. The 2019 and 2020 vintages sell for around $65. The 2022 is around $95. while the 2023 has already settled back to around $70, making it particularly attractive. Domaine Bruno Clair. Bruno Clair founded his domain in 1979 after rebuilding the family's vineyard holdings from scratch. Over the following decades, he gradually expanded across the Côte de Nuit, creating what has become one of Burgundy's benchmark domains. Today, the estate spans around 27 hectares across 8 villages and is increasingly run alongside the next generation. Bruno Clair has built his reputation on precision. His wines are transparent expressions of terroir. His holding in Rue de Vergy covers around 1.15 hectares, planted equally to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, making him one of the vineyard's largest owners. On the nose, I find bright cherry, raspberry, fresh stone, gentle spice, and delicate floral aromas. The palate is tighter than the Felettig. Silky tannins frame vibrant red fruit, while bright acidity and a pronounced mineral core carry the wine through a remarkably long finish. Around 5 years of age, the wine begins to reveal its finesse. Another 5 to 10 years brings even greater complexity. The 2020 vintage currently represents particularly good buying at around $80. The 2019 sits around $95, while the more recent 2022 and 2023 vintages are closer to $110. The verdict: if someone asks me which bottle to buy, my first question wouldn't be which producer is better. It would be, when do you want to drink it? Because that's really the difference. Both producers capture everything that makes Rue de Vergy such a remarkable vineyard. They simply tell the story in different ways. Bruno Clair is the more classical interpretation: bright red fruit, crunchy acidity, minerality, structure. This is the bottle I would buy if I planned to leave it in the cellar for another decade. Felettig takes a more generous approach: darker fruit, softer tannins, more texture, more immediate pleasure. If I wanted to open a bottle over the next few years, this would probably be my choice. Personally, I don't think there is a wrong answer. One offers structure and patience, the other offers texture and charm. What impresses me most is that both come from a village vineyard that repeatedly performs at the level I would happily compare with many Premier Crus. That's why Rue de Vergy has become one of my favorite buying opportunities in Burgundy. And at today's prices, I would happily add either of these bottles to my cellar again. There are other great producers of Rue de Vergy, and I have several other producers waiting in the cellar. I would love to explore them in future episodes. If you could only choose one, which style appeals to you more? The classical precision of Bruno Clair or the generous elegance of Felettig? Let me know in the comment section below. And I would also love to hear if there is another overlooked Burgundy vineyard you would like me to explore in a future episode. You will find more of my cellar insights and tasting notes on Instagram. Massive thanks for watching today, and I will see you in the next one.